The red sky of Ketra Prime burned with 3 suns. Commander Kale-9 stood on the observation deck of his battlecruiser, watching the molten rivers flow far below. His thick, scaled hide barely noticed the heat that would cook most living things, in seconds. This was home. This was where the Vorthok were born to rule. Kale-9 was 12 feet tall and built like a living tank. His 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal. His tail could break bones with a casual swing. 2 rows of teeth lined his massive jaw, each tooth as long as a human finger. His kind had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and there was a simple reason why. Nothing could kill them. The Vorthok came from the worst world anyone had ever found. Ketra Prime had gravity that would crush most bones. The air was full of acid that burned lungs. The ground shook with earthquakes every day. Volcanoes exploded without warning. The native animals were all predators, each one designed to kill anything that moved. But the Vorthok had survived it all. More than survived. They had become the ultimate hunters. Their bodies could heal from almost any wound. Their strength could break through any defense. Their technology was built for war and nothing else. When they found other species among the stars, those species had 2 choices: bow down or die. Most chose to bow down. Kale-9 turned as his communication officer approached. The smaller Vorthok kept his head low in respect. "Commander, we have received new intelligence from the rim sectors." "Speak," Kale-9 growled. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "Our scouts have found a new species. They call themselves humans. They come from a world called Earth." Kale-9 felt his interest rise. New species meant new worlds to conquer. New slaves to work in the Empire's mines. "Tell me about this world." The officer checked his datapad. "Initial scans show it is another Deathworld, Commander. High gravity, unstable weather, active geology, but nothing compared to Ketra Prime." "Of course not." Kale-9 laughed, a sound like rocks falling. "Nothing compares to our world. These humans, are they strong?" "Unknown, Commander. But if they come from a death world, they might provide good workers. Or good sport in the fighting pits." Kale-9 nodded. The Vorthok had found other death world species before. They were always tougher than the soft races that lived on easy planets. But they were never tough enough. In the end, they all broke under Vorthok's strength. "How many ships do they have?" "Very few, Commander. Maybe 50 vessels total, small ones. They appear to be just starting to explore beyond their home system." "Perfect." Kale-9 showed his teeth in what other species had learned to fear. "Send word to Fleet Admiral Thex Prime. Tell him we have found new hunting grounds." Far across the galaxy, on a small blue and green world, Captain Hyun-woo was having a very different conversation. He sat in the briefing room of Earth's Spaceport Authority, looking at star charts with other human officers. Unlike Kale-9, Hyun-woo was only 6 feet tall and weighed less than 200 pounds. His uniform was clean and practical. No claws, no fangs, no thick armor hide. Just a human being who had trained his whole life to explore the stars. "The deep space mission is approved," Admiral Kim was saying. "Your ship will be the first to travel beyond the Kepler system. We need to know what's out there." Hyun-woo nodded. He had volunteered for this mission because he believed in humanity's future among the stars. Earth was getting crowded. They needed new worlds, new resources, new friends among the galactic community. "What do we know about alien contact protocols?" asked Dr. So-young, the mission's science officer. She was young but brilliant, with degrees in biology and linguistics. "Not much," Admiral Kim admitted. "We have detected radio signals that suggest intelligent life. But we have never met anyone face to face. The protocol is simple. Be peaceful. Be respectful. Try to learn. And if they are not peaceful?" This came from Lieutenant Min Ho, the mission's security chief. He was a practical man who believed in being prepared for anything. Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment. "Then you do what humans have always done. You survive. You protect your crew. You come home." Hyun-woo looked around the table at his team, So-young with her scientific curiosity, Min Ho with his careful planning, Engineer Dong-hyun who could fix anything that broke, Communications Officer Yoon-ji who spoke 7 languages and was learning 2 more, They were good people, smart people, but they had no idea what was waiting for them in the dark between stars. Neither did the rest of humanity. Earth's people went about their daily lives completely unaware that they had just appeared on the target list of the galaxy's most feared empire. They worked in their cities, raised their children, built their machines, and dreamed of peaceful contact with alien civilizations. They had no idea that those alien civilizations were already slaves. The Vorthak Empire controlled over 1,000 worlds. Some species had fought back when the Vorthak arrived. They had used every weapon they could build, every strategy they could think of, every advantage their home worlds gave them. It had not mattered. The Vorthak were simply too strong, too tough, too ruthless. The Empire was built on a simple truth. The Vorthak were apex predators, and everyone else was prey. In his private chambers, Kyle 9 studied the reports about humans more carefully. Their world, Earth, was classified as a death world, but the details seemed wrong somehow. The gravity was strong, but not crushing. The weather was dangerous, but not constantly deadly. The geology was active, but not explosive. More puzzling were the life forms. Earth had an impossible variety of creatures. Some were predators, some were prey, some were both. They seemed to exist in a complex web that defied simple understanding. On Ketra Prime, everything was a predator. Everything was designed to kill. It was simple. It made sense. Earth made no sense at all, but that did not matter. Kyle 9 had seen the humans' ships. They were small and lightly armed. The humans themselves looked fragile in the long-range scans. Whatever advantages their death world had given them, it could not possibly compare to the forge that had created the Vorthak. Soon, Fleet Admiral Thex Prime would arrive with a full battle group. They would find these humans and give them the same choice every other species had received: submit or be destroyed. Kyle 9 expected they would choose to submit. They always did, once they saw what the Vorthak could do. He had no way of knowing that humans had never learned how to submit. Their death world had taught them many things, but surrender was not one of them. The galaxy was about to learn something new about apex predators. Sometimes there was more than one kind. The UES Determination moved through space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge, watching the stars shift on the main screen. They had been traveling for 6 months, further from Earth than any human had ever gone. "Captain," Communications Officer Yoon-ji called from her station. "I'm picking up something strange. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark IV. Hyunwoo moved to her console. "What kind of contacts?" "Ships, sir. Big ones. They're using energy signatures I've never seen before." Yoon-ji's fingers danced over her controls. "Wait, they're turning toward us, moving fast." On the main screen, 5 massive shapes emerged from the darkness. They were nothing like human ships. Where the Determination was sleek and efficient, these vessels looked like floating fortresses. Their hulls were covered in scars and weapon ports. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything they could not kill. "My God," whispered Dr. So Young from the science station. "Those ships are enormous. Each one is 10 times our size." Security Chief Minho was already at his station, checking weapon systems. "Captain, should I arm our weapons?" "No." Hyun-woo's voice was calm. "We're explorers, not soldiers. Open a channel, Yoon-ji." "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Hyun-woo of the United Earth Ship Determination. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with other intelligent species." For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice filled the bridge. It was deep and harsh, like the growl of some massive beast. The translation software struggled to make sense of it. "Small ship, you have entered Vorthak space. You will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was not the peaceful first contact they had hoped for. "Unknown vessel," Hyun-woo replied carefully. "We were not aware this space was claimed. We are explorers from Earth, seeking peaceful contact. Perhaps we could meet somewhere neutral to discuss this situation." The growling voice returned, and this time it sounded amused. "There is nothing to discuss, small creature. You will submit to Vorthak authority, or you will die. This is the natural order. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. You are prey. Dr. So Young looked up from her scans. Captain, I'm reading massive life signs on those ships. Whatever. These Vorthak are. They're big. Really big. Lieutenant Minho checked his tactical display. Their weapons are armed and locked onto us. We're completely outgunned. Hyunwoo considered their options. They could try to run, but the alien ships were faster. They could fight, but they would lose quickly. Or they could do what the Vorthak expected. Submit like good prey animals. That last option made something cold and hard form in Hyunwoo's chest. Humans had spent 10,000 years refusing to be prey. They had faced ice ages and plagues and natural disasters that should have wiped them out. They had never learned to give up when things looked impossible. Vorthak vessel, Hyunwoo said into the communicator. I appreciate your position, but I'm afraid we cannot submit to your authority. We are representatives of humanity, and we don't kneel to anyone. Silence filled the bridge. Even his own crew stared at him in shock. The Vorthak voice returned, and now it definitely sounded amused. Did you just refuse a direct order from the Vorthak Empire? You, in your tiny ship, refuse to submit to us? That's correct. More silence. Then the sound of what might have been laughter, if laughter came, from something with too many teeth. How refreshing. It has been centuries since prey showed such spirit. Very well, small human. You will have the honor of being personally conquered by General Thex Prime himself. Do not move from your current position. He will arrive shortly to teach you proper respect. The communication cut off. The alien ships maintained their distance, but kept their weapons trained on the determination. Captain, Minho said quietly, we need to call for backup. Already doing it, Yoonji replied, but the nearest Earth ships are months away. Dr. So Young was studying her scanners. These Vorthak, they're from a heavy gravity world, high radiation environment. Their biology suggests they're incredibly tough. They might actually be natural apex predators. Might be, Hyunwoo asked. Well, they think they are. But then, so do great white sharks until they meet killer whales. Engineer Dong Hyun looked up from his station. Captain, I can give you 30% more speed if you want to run, and I can route power from life support to weapons if you want to fight. What are our chances in a fight? Honestly, nearly zero. But we might surprise them. They don't know what human engineering can do under pressure. Hyunwoo walked to the main screen and stared at the alien ships. Somewhere on those vessels were creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. They thought they were unbeatable. They thought humans would be just another easy conquest. They were about to learn that humans had their own ideas about what made an apex predator. Hours passed. The crew of the Determination used the time to prepare. Dr. So Young analyzed every scrap of data about the Vorthak ships. Engineer Dong Hyun quietly made modifications to their weapons and engines. Lieutenant Minho drilled his small security team. Communications Officer Yoonji worked on recording everything for transmission to Earth. Then space twisted, and something massive emerged from faster-than-light travel. The newcomer was a ship that defied description. It was less built than grown, like some massive predator shaped into a vessel of war. Weapons bristled from every surface. Its hull bore the scars of 100 battles. It was 3 times larger than the ships already present. New contact is hailing us, Yoonji reported. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge made the previous Vorthak sound gentle. It was the vocal equivalent of an avalanche, deep and unstoppable. I am General Thex Prime of the Vorthak Empire. I have come to see these humans who dare refuse Imperial commands. This is Captain Hyunwoo. We're honored to meet you, General. Honor? The massive voice seemed confused. You think it is an honor to meet your death? How curious. Most species beg for mercy at this point. We're not most species. No, apparently not. Tell me, Captain Hyunwoo, what makes you think your tiny vessel can stand against the might of the Vorthak Empire? Hyunwoo looked around his bridge at his crew. They were scared, he could see it in their eyes. But they were also determined. That was the thing about humans. The worse things got, the more stubborn they became. We don't think we can win, General. But we think we can make you remember this day for a very long time. Interesting. Your species fascinates me, human. Very well. You have earned the right to see a Vorthak warrior before you die. Prepare to be boarded. The communication ended. On the screen, massive ships began moving closer. Dr. So-Young looked up from her station with wide eyes. Captain, the life signs on that command ship. Whatever's coming over here, it's the size of a small building and probably weighs as much as a truck. Noted. Minho, are your people ready? As ready as we can be, sir. Dong-Hyun, all systems. Green? Green and then some, Captain. If we're going down, we'll go down fighting. Yoonji, is our message ready for Earth? Ready to transmit on your command, sir. Everything we've learned about the Vorthak will get home. Hyunwoo nodded. His crew was ready. They would face whatever came through that airlock with the same stubborn courage that had carried humanity through ice ages and asteroid impacts and every other disaster their home world had thrown at them. The Vorthak thought they were apex predators. They were about to meet the species that had spent its entire existence proving that being an apex predator was about more than just being big and strong. It was about never knowing when to quit. Dr. So-Young had been staring at the same data for 6 hours, and it still made no sense. She sat in her laboratory at Seoul National University, surrounded by computer screens showing biological analysis from the first encounter with the Vorthak. The data had arrived on a message burst from Captain Yunwoo's ship, sent just before the aliens had boarded. The Vorthak were impressive, she had to admit. Their cellular structure was incredibly dense. Their bones were like living metal. Their muscle fibers could generate force that seemed impossible for biological tissue. They were built like living tanks, designed to survive and destroy in equal measure. But something was wrong with the environmental data from their home world. Yun-Ho, look at this, she called to her research assistant. The young man hurried over, carrying another cup of coffee. What am I looking at, Doctor? This is the radiation signature from Ketra Prime, the Vorthak home world. See these patterns? They're regular, predictable. The radiation spikes follow a clear cycle based on their 3-star system. Okay, and that's unusual because? So-Young pulled up another screen. Compare it to Earth's radiation environment. Look at these variations. Solar flares, cosmic rays, magnetic field fluctuations. Our planet's radiation changes constantly. There's no pattern you can adapt to. Yun-Ho frowned. So the Vorthak evolved to handle steady radiation, while we evolved to handle random radiation? Exactly. And that's just one example. So-Young opened more files. Their gravity is higher than ours, but it's constant across their whole planet. Earth's gravity varies by location and altitude. Their atmospheric composition is toxic to most life, but it's stable. Earth's atmosphere has changed completely several times in our history. Doctor, what are you saying? So-Young leaned back in her chair and rubbed her tired eyes. I'm saying that Ketra Prime might be a death world, but it's a predictable death world. Everything there follows patterns. The dangers are consistent. Once you adapt to them, you're safe. And Earth? Earth is chaos. Nothing stays the same. The climate changes randomly. The continents move. The magnetic field flips. Asteroids hit us. Ice ages come and go. Our planet doesn't just try to kill us. It constantly changes how it tries to kill us. Yun-Ho was quiet for a moment. So, the Vorthak are perfectly adapted for their specific death world. Right. But we're adapted for change itself. We're not built to survive one type of environment. We're built to survive anything. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Vorthak flagship, Intelligence Officer Zeth-7 was having his own moment of confusion. He stood before a holographic display showing everything they had learned about the human home world, and none of it made sense. These readings cannot be correct, he rumbled to his assistant. Run the analysis again. I have run it 12 times, sir. The results are always the same. Zeth-7 stared at the spinning image of Earth. It was a beautiful world. Blue and white and green, it looked peaceful. It looked like the kind of soft paradise world where weak species lived comfortable lives. But the environmental data told a different story. The tectonic activity alone should have destroyed any complex civilization. Zeth-7 muttered. These earthquakes happen randomly anywhere on the planet. No predictable zones, no safe areas. Yes, sir. And the weather patterns are even more chaotic. Temperature swings of 40 degrees in a single day. Storms that appear without warning and change direction randomly. Precipitation that varies from drought to flood in the same region. How do they plan for such things? According to their data transmissions, sir, they don't. They just deal with whatever happens. Zeth-7 found this concept almost impossible to grasp. Vorthak civilization was built on understanding and controlling their environment. They knew exactly when the acid storms would come. They knew which areas would be hit by lava flows. They planned everything according to the predictable cycles of their world. Humans seem to live in a state of constant emergency. Show me their biological data again. The hologram shifted to display human anatomy. Zeth-7 studied it with the eye of someone who had analyzed 1,000 different species. They are small, he noted. Weak bones, thin skin, no natural weapons, no armor. Yes, sir. But look at this neural data. Their brain-to-body ratio is extremely high. And these structures here suggest rapid adaptation to changing conditions. Their brains are oversized for their bodies? By Vorthak standards, yes, sir. But perhaps they need those large brains to survive on their world. Zeth-7 considered this. The Vorthak had large brains too, but most of their intelligence was devoted to hunting and fighting. Humans seem to use their intelligence differently. What about their technology? That is where things become truly strange, sir. The assistant brought up technical specifications from human ships. Their technology is not optimized for any specific environment. It is designed to work in multiple conditions. Explain. Take their life support systems. Vorthak life support is designed for our atmospheric mixture and gravity. It works perfectly in those conditions. Human life support can adjust to dozens of different atmospheric compositions and gravity levels. Why would they need such flexibility? Unknown, sir. Perhaps because their homeworld is so unpredictable that they had to design everything to work under changing conditions. Zeth-7 walked around the holographic display, studying the human data from every angle. There was something deeply unsettling about this species. They didn't seem to fit any known pattern of evolution. Most Deathworld species evolved like the Vorthak. They became bigger, stronger, tougher. They developed natural weapons and armor. They specialized to dominate their specific environment. Humans had done the opposite. They stayed small and weak, but became incredibly adaptable. Instead of growing claws, they made tools. Instead of developing armor, they made shelters. Instead of becoming perfect for one environment, they became adequate for any environment. It was a completely different survival strategy, and Zeth-7 wasn't sure what it meant. Back on Earth, Dr. So-Young was reaching similar conclusions. She had called together every xenobiologist and evolutionary expert she could find. The conference room at the university was packed with the best minds humanity had to offer. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we need to talk about what we're really dealing with." She activated the holographic display showing Vorthak biology. These aliens are apex predators. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, tougher than us. In a direct fight, they would win every time. Murmurs of concern rippled through the room. "However," So-Young continued, "I believe we have a fundamental advantage they don't understand. They evolved on a death world, yes, but a predictable death world. They became perfect for that specific set of conditions." She switched the display to show Earth's history. "We evolved on a chaos world. Our planet has tried to kill us in every way possible. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate changes, magnetic field reversals, continental drift. Earth never let us get comfortable." Professor Kim from the front row raised his hand. "Are you saying we're more adapted than they are?" "I'm saying we're adapted for different things. They're adapted for dominating a specific environment. We're adapted for surviving anything our world can throw at us, and our world has thrown everything at us." The room was quiet as people absorbed this. "There's something else," So-Young added. "Look at their technology. It's incredibly advanced, but it's all designed for conquest and control. Everything is built to be the biggest, strongest, most destructive. And our technology? Our technology is built to solve problems. Any problems. We don't build the strongest weapons. We build the most versatile ones. We don't build the toughest ships. We build the most adaptable ones." Dr. Park from the back of the room stood up. "So what you're saying is that they're hammers and we're Swiss Army knives?" "That's actually not a bad analogy. They're perfect. Hammers. The best hammers in the galaxy. But what happens when the problem isn't a nail?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Far away on the Vorthak flagship, General Thex Prime was meeting with his officers. The boarding of the human ship had been educational. "Tell me again what happened," he rumbled. Commander KL-9 shifted uncomfortably. "The humans did not fight as expected, General. They were clearly outmatched, but they never stopped trying to win." "Trying to win? Against Vorthak warriors?" "Yes, sir. They used their ship's systems as weapons. They turned their own corridors into traps. When we cornered them on the bridge, their captain activated the self-destruct sequence. They chose death over surrender?" "No, sir. That's what made it strange. They were not trying to die honorably. They were trying to take us with them. The captain said, and I quote, 'If we can't win, we'll make sure you remember us.'" Thex Prime was quiet for a long moment. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen mutual destruction over surrender. "What happened then?" "We managed to disable their self-destruct, sir, but it was close, very close. And the crew? We have them in detention. They are difficult prisoners, sir. They keep trying to escape. They study our ship designs. They ask questions about everything. It is like they are planning something." Thex Prime nodded slowly. These humans were unlike any species the Vorthak had encountered. Most Deathworld species fought hard but eventually accepted defeat when faced with superior force. Humans see the warning came too late. Colonial Defense Commander Min Ho was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency sirens began wailing across New Busan. He dropped the cup and ran to the command center, still in his sleeping clothes. The duty officer was already at her station, her face pale with fear. "Report!" Min Ho barked. "Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel," Officer Yoon replied. 15 ships, possibly more. They're massive, sir, and they're heading straight for us." Min Ho looked at the tactical display. New Busan was humanity's first major colony outside Earth's solar system. 50,000 civilians lived here, farming the rich soil and mining the abundant metals. It was supposed to be safe, far from any known threats. Are they responding to communications? No, sir. But we're picking up energy signatures consistent with the Vorthak vessels that captured Captain Hyunwoo's ship. Min Ho felt ice form in his stomach. Earth's government had sent warnings about the Vorthak Empire, but New Busan was months away from any military support. The colony had a few patrol boats and a handful of security officers. They were not prepared for a real invasion. How long until they reach us? 6 hours, sir. Min Ho opened a channel to the entire colony. "This is Colonial Defense Command. All civilians are to report to the underground shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." He switched to his security frequency. "All defense personnel to stations. We have incoming hostiles, unknown numbers, unknown capabilities. Prepare for possible invasion." Across the colony, 50,000 people began the largest evacuation in human history outside of Earth. Families grabbed emergency supplies and headed for the deep caves that had been converted into shelters. Farmers abandoned their fields. Miners left their equipment and ran for safety. But not everyone ran. Colonial Administrator Yun Ji stood in the main government building coordinating the evacuation. She was a small woman with graying hair and the calm manner of someone who had managed disasters before. But she had never managed anything like this. "Status report," she called to her staff. "Sectors 1 through 12 are clear," reported her assistant. "Sectors 13 through 20 are at 50% evacuation. The mining camps are proving difficult." "Why?" "The miners don't want to leave their equipment. They say it represents years of work." Yoonji understood their feelings, but this was not the time for sentiment. Send security teams to force them out if necessary. Equipment can be replaced. People cannot. She opened a communication channel to the defense center. "Min Ho, how much time do we have?" 5 hours now, maybe less if they speed up. "What are our defensive capabilities?" There was a pause. "Honestly, Yoonji, almost none. We have 3 patrol boats with light weapons. We have about 200 security officers with small arms. Against an invasion fleet, we might as well throw rocks." Yoonji was quiet for a moment, thinking. New Busan had been built with disaster in mind because human colonies had learned from Earth's harsh lessons. But they had planned for natural disasters, not alien invasions. What about the industrial equipment? What do you mean? The mining charges, the construction explosives, the heavy machinery. Can we turn any of that into weapons? Maybe. But Yunji, even if we could arm the entire colony, we're talking about fighting aliens who conquered the galaxy. What chance do we have? The same chance humanity has always had. None at all until we make one. In the underground command bunker, Minho was having similar thoughts. He had served in Earth's military for 20 years before taking this colonial posting. He had trained for every kind of warfare except the kind that was coming toward them, but humans had always been good at improvising. Sergeant Park, he called to his senior non-commissioned officer. What kind of explosives do we have access to? Standard mining charges, sir. Construction explosives for clearing land, some industrial compounds for processing ore. Can we weaponize them? If we get creative, yes, sir. But, sir, we don't know anything about alien biology. We don't know if our explosives will even hurt them. Then we'll find out the hard way. Minho pulled up the colony's layout on his screen. I want charges placed at every major intersection, every bridge, every tunnel entrance. If they want this colony, they're going to have to dig us out piece by piece. Sir, that will destroy most of the infrastructure we've spent years building. Better to destroy it ourselves than let them take it intact. Above ground, the massive Vorthak fleet dropped into orbit around New Busan's world. General Thex Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the human colony through the planet's thin atmosphere. Analysis, he commanded. The colony appears to be built around agricultural and mining operations, his science officer reported. Population approximately 50,000. Minimal military presence detected. Good. A simple conquest. We will. Make an example of this place that other human colonies will remember. Sir, the humans appear to be evacuating to underground positions. Thex Prime was not surprised. Most species tried to hide when the Vorthak arrived. It made no difference. Underground positions just meant the hunting would take a little longer. Deploy. The first wave. Standard occupation protocol. Secure the surface installations, then root out the survivors. Yes, sir. Massive transport ships began dropping toward the planet's surface. Each one carried a full battalion of Vorthak warriors, equipped with the finest weapons the Empire could provide. They had done this 1,000 times before. It was always the same. But as the first transports touched down, something unusual happened. The ground exploded. Commander Minho watched the tactical display from his underground bunker. Direct hit on landing zone Alpha. The mining charges worked perfectly. Sir, we got one of their transports, but there are 14 more. Then we make them pay for every meter. The Vorthak warriors who survived the explosion were confused, but not defeated. They had never encountered defenders who destroyed their own infrastructure to deny it to invaders. Most species tried to preserve what they had built. These humans seemed willing to destroy everything rather than lose it. Advance. To the primary settlement, commanded Battalion Leader Kex 4. Secure the administrative center. The Vorthak warriors moved forward with the confidence of apex predators. They were 12 feet tall, armored in scales that could stop bullets, armed with weapons that could melt steel. A few primitive explosive traps would not stop them. Then, the building started fighting back. Administrator Yunji had spent the last 4 hours turning New Busan into a death trap. Every structure had been rigged with explosives. Every piece of heavy machinery had been turned into a weapon. The humans had retreated to their underground shelters, but they had left surprises behind. Detonate Section 7, she ordered, on. The surface. A Vorthak squad was searching through the administrative building when the charges went off. The structure collapsed on top of them, burying warriors who had survived the worst their home world could offer. Section 12, now. Another. Explosion. Another squad of invaders, trapped under tons of rubble. The Vorthak were learning that humans fought differently than other species. Most Deathworld inhabitants relied on their natural strength and toughness. Humans relied on their technology and their willingness to sacrifice anything to win. Sir, reported Commander KL-9 to General Thex Prime, the humans are not fighting conventionally. They are destroying their own colony to deny it to us. Are they effective? More than expected, sir. We have lost 3 squads to booby traps and structural collapses. The humans appear to have rigged their entire settlement as a weapon. Thex Prime was intrigued, despite himself. Casualties among the humans? Unknown, sir. They have retreated to underground positions. We cannot get accurate counts, then dig them out. But digging out the humans proved more difficult than expected. The underground shelters had been built to survive natural disasters, which on human worlds meant surviving almost anything. The Vorthak found themselves fighting through narrow tunnels against defenders who knew every passage and had prepared every choke point. Hours passed. The Vorthak controlled the surface of New Busan, but it was a surface of ruins and death traps. The real battle was happening underground, in corridors barely wide enough for Vorthak warriors to move through. This is taking too long, Thex Prime decided. Use heavy weapons. Bring down the entire underground complex. Sir, that will kill all the humans. We will have no prisoners to interrogate, no examples to make. Then so be it. These humans are proving more troublesome than expected. Deep underground, Commander Minho received word that the Vorthak were preparing to use orbital bombardment to collapse the tunnel system. How long do we have? He asked. Maybe an hour, replied his communications officer. The energy signatures suggest they're charging some kind of massive weapon. Minho looked around the command center at his people. They were scared, but determined. They had given the Vorthak a fight no one expected, but it was ending. Open a channel to Earth, he ordered. Sir, transmission lag is still 6 hours. I know, but they need to know what happened here. The channel opened. Minho looked into the recorder and spoke to people who would not receive his words for hours. This is Colonial Defense Commander Minho of New Busan. If you are receiving this message, then we are probably dead, but we want you to know that we made them pay. The laboratories aboard the Vorthak flagship hummed with activity. Chief Science Officer Core Omega stood over a medical table where a captured human soldier lay unconscious. The human was small by Vorthak standards, barely reaching Core Omega's waist, but the initial examinations had revealed something impossible. This creature should not exist. Core Omega activated his recording device. Personal log, Day 15 of human analysis. Subject designation, Human 7. Male specimen, approximately 30 Earth years old, captured during the New Busan operation. He gestured to his assistants, who began the detailed biological scan. The results appeared on holographic displays around the table. Initial observations continued to defy standard evolutionary theory. Core Omega continued. The human skeletal structure is adequate, but not exceptional. Muscle density is low compared to other Deathworld species. Skin provides minimal protection against environmental hazards. He paused the recording and stared at the readings. Run the cellular analysis again. Sir, we have run it 12 times. The results are consistent. That cannot be correct. Check. The equipment for malfunctions. But the equipment was working perfectly. The impossible readings were real. Core Omega resumed his recording. Cellular examination reveals the most significant anomaly. Human cells demonstrate extraordinary adaptability to changing conditions, unlike Vorthak cells, which are optimized. For specific environmental parameters, human cells appear capable of functioning across a wide range of conditions. He zoomed in on the microscopic imagery. More disturbing is the neural tissue. Brain-to-body ratio exceeds all known standards. For Deathworld species, neural pathways show extreme development in areas associated with problem-solving and adaptation. His assistant, Sub-Omega 3, looked up from his station. Sir, the blood chemistry analysis is complete. The results are unusual. Define unusual. The human stress response system is unlike anything we have seen. When most organisms encounter danger, their bodies optimize for a single response pattern: fight, flee, or freeze. Human biochemistry appears to optimize for all responses simultaneously while maintaining cognitive function. Core Omega studied the data with growing unease. They maintain reasoning ability under extreme stress? Not only maintain it, sir. The data suggests their reasoning ability actually improves under stress conditions. This was wrong. This violated everything Core Omega knew about evolutionary biology. Deathworld species survived through specialization. They became bigger, stronger, more aggressive. They developed natural weapons and armor. They optimized for dominance. Humans had done something else entirely. They had optimized for thinking their way out of problems. Sir, another assistant called out, we have completed the genetic analysis. Report. Human genetic diversity is extraordinary. In a single individual, we find genetic markers suggesting adaptation to dozens of different environmental conditions. Hot climates, cold climates, high altitude, low altitude, various atmospheric compositions. That is impossible. No single species can adapt to that many different environments. Unless, sir, their environment changed constantly, forcing them to adapt to many different conditions over time. Core Omega was quiet for a long moment. He called up the environmental data from Earth, information the Vorthak had gathered during their initial surveillance. What he saw made his scaled hide crawl with unease. Earth was not just a death world, it was a chaos world. The climate had shifted dramatically dozens of times in human evolutionary history. Ice ages had come and gone randomly. Asteroid impacts had changed the environment overnight. Volcanic eruptions had blotted out the sun for years at a time. Most species would have gone extinct in the first major change. Humans had not only survived, they had thrived. Each disaster had made them more adaptable, more resourceful, more capable of handling the unexpected. The Vorthak had evolved to be perfect predators for their specific world. Humans had evolved to be adequate survivors for any world. And in a galaxy full of different worlds, that might make humans the ultimate apex predators. Meanwhile, on Earth, Strategic Defense Coordinator Dong Hyun was reaching similar conclusions from the opposite direction. He sat in the Global Defense Command Center studying every piece of information they had gathered about the Vorthak Empire. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and strangely reassuring. Analysis summary, he said into his recording device. The Vorthak Empire has conquered over 1,000 worlds in 3,000 years. Their military success rate is essentially 100%. He pulled up holographic displays showing Vorthak technology. Their weapons are incredibly powerful. Their ships are nearly indestructible. Their soldiers are individually superior to human soldiers in every measurable way. Defense Minister Lee looked up from her own workstation. That doesn't sound reassuring, Dong-hyun. Wait for it, he replied. Computer, display Vorthak tactical patterns from the last 50 conquests. The hologram shifted to show battle analyses. Notice anything? Minister Lee studied the data. They use the same strategy every time. Exactly. Overwhelming force. Direct. Assault. Rapid conquest. It works perfectly against species that fight conventionally. And we don't fight conventionally? Minister, we're the species that invented guerrilla warfare because we were too stubborn to admit when we were outgunned. We're the species that turned our own cities into weapons during siege warfare. We're the species that has never, in our entire history, fought a war the way our enemies expected us to. Dong-hyun pulled up tactical analyses from New Busan. Look at this. The colonists turned their entire settlement into a booby trap. They used mining equipment as weapons. They collapsed their own buildings on enemy soldiers. The Vorthak had never encountered anything like it. What does that tell us? It tells us that the Vorthak are hammers. Very big, very powerful hammers. They're perfect for dealing with nails. But what happens when the problem isn't a nail? Minister Lee was beginning to understand. You think we can beat them? I think we can make them wish they had never found us. The Vorthak are used to conquest being easy. They show up, they overwhelm the enemy, they move on. They've never had to fight a war of attrition against an enemy that refuses to stay beaten. Dong-hyun activated another display. I've been studying our own military history. Do you know what every successful invasion of Earth has had in common? Tell me. They all eventually failed. Romans conquered Britain, but the Britons eventually drove them out. Mongols conquered China, but China eventually absorbed them. Colonial powers conquered indigenous peoples, but those peoples eventually won their independence. Humans have never stayed conquered. The Vorthak aren't human conquerors. No, they're not. They're worse at occupation than humans are. Look at their empire. They rule through fear and overwhelming force. They don't integrate conquered peoples, they just dominate them. That works fine as long as you're stronger than everyone else. And if you're not, then your empire falls apart very quickly. Back on the Vorthak flagship, General Thex Prime was meeting with his senior officers. The conquest of New Busan had been technically successful, but it had cost far more than expected. More importantly, it had raised disturbing questions about human capabilities. Casualty report, Thex Prime commanded. 17 warriors killed, 43 wounded, reported Commander KL-9, against a colony with minimal military presence. And human casualties? Difficult to determine, sir. Many humans were killed in the bombing, but others escaped through tunnel systems we did not know existed. Best estimate is 60% of the colony population survived. Thex Prime was not pleased. 60% survival rates were unacceptable for a Vorthak conquest. Usually, resistance forces were eliminated completely, with only a small population, kept alive for labor purposes. What made this conquest different? The humans did not fight like other Deathworld species, sir. They did not rely on their physical capabilities. Instead, they used tools, traps, and environmental advantages. They used their intelligence as a weapon. Yes, sir. And they demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice anything to achieve their objectives. They destroyed their own infrastructure rather than let us capture it intact. Intelligence Officer Zeth-7 spoke up. Sir, I have been analyzing human military history. This behavior pattern is consistent across their entire species development. Explain. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, sir. In every case, when faced with superior enemies, they adapt their tactics rather than their biology. They do not become stronger. They become smarter. And this makes them dangerous? Sir, they are the only species we have encountered that treats warfare as a problem to be solved rather than a contest of strength. Thex Prime considered this. The Vorthak way of war was simple and effective. Find the enemy, defeat the enemy through superior force, rule the conquered territory. It had worked for 3,000 years, but humans seemed to approach warfare as an engineering problem. They analyzed enemy capabilities, identified weaknesses, and exploited those weaknesses with whatever tools they could find or create. It was a completely different philosophy of conflict, and Thex Prime was not sure how to counter it. Sir, Zeth-7 continued, there is something else. We have detected increased communication traffic between human colonies. They are sharing Admiral Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the alien stars grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled moved through space toward Ketra Prime, the home world of the Vorthak Empire. It had taken 6 months to build this fleet. 6 months of every human world contributing ships, weapons, and volunteers. The Vorthak had expected humanity to collapse after losing 3 colonies. Instead, humans had done what they always did when backed into a corner. They had gotten angry. Status. Report, Ji-hoon called to his bridge crew. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, replied his tactical officer. 200 vessels, ranging from converted cargo ships to purpose-built warships. And our special cargo. Secured and ready for deployment, sir. Ji-hoon nodded. The special cargo was Earth's final gift to the galaxy. If the Vorthak wanted to see what a real death world could produce, humanity would show them. They had brought Earth with them. Meanwhile, at the edge of Earth's solar system, the largest Vorthak fleet ever assembled prepared for the final assault. Supreme War Leader Kale Prime commanded from his flagship, a vessel so massive it had its own gravity field. Around him, 1,000 ships moved in perfect formation toward the blue and green world that had defied the Empire. Final intelligence report, Kale Prime commanded. Earth's defenses are minimal, Supreme Leader, reported his intelligence chief. A few dozen orbital platforms, maybe 100 system patrol ships. The planet itself appears defenseless. How? Many humans on the surface? Approximately 10 billion, sir. Kale Prime showed his teeth in satisfaction. 10 billion humans would make for an impressive example to any other species that considered resistance. What is our estimated time for complete conquest? No more than 3 days, sir. The humans have never faced an assault of this magnitude. But as the Vorthak fleet entered Earth's solar system, they began to encounter things that made no sense. Sir, the sensor officer called out, I am detecting massive energy readings from the third planet's moon. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. And the planet itself? Sir, the atmospheric disturbances are increasing. Weather patterns are becoming more chaotic. It is almost as if what? As if the planet is preparing for war, sir. On Earth's surface, the preparations had been unlike anything in human history. Every major government had contributed resources to what scientists were calling the Awakening Protocol. Dr. So Young stood in the Antarctic facility that housed the primary control systems, watching readouts that would have seemed like science fiction a year ago. Atmospheric modification is at 90%, reported her assistant. Tectonic stimulation is online. Weather control systems are active. And the biological agents? Deployed across all major population centers. If any Vorthak forces reach the surface, they will find Earth very different from their expectations. So Young looked at the global map showing the modifications they had made to their own planet. It had been the most ambitious project in human history, and possibly the most insane. Faced with invasion by aliens who were individually superior in every way, humanity had decided to level the playing field by making Earth itself into a weapon. They had weaponized their home world. The first engagement began when the Vorthak fleet reached Mars. Admiral Ji Hun's forces had positioned themselves in the asteroid belt, using the chaotic environment to their advantage. All ships, this is Admiral Ji Hun. Remember, we're not trying to win a fleet engagement. We're trying to teach them what chaos feels like. The human ships moved unpredictably through the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover and weapons. Vorthak vessels found themselves under attack from multiple directions simultaneously, never knowing where the next threat would come from. This is not standard fleet combat, complained Vorthak Fleet Commander Hex Prime to his subordinates. They are fighting like pirates, not warriors. Sir, we are losing ships to asteroid impacts. The humans are using the environment as a weapon. Then clear the asteroids. Sir, there are thousands of them, and the humans keep moving them into our path. This was the human way of war. They did not have stronger ships, so they used the battlefield itself as an ally. They turned every piece of space debris into a potential weapon, every gravitational field into a tactical advantage. The Vorthak had superior firepower, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to engage them on equal terms. Meanwhile, Supreme, War Leader Kale Prime pressed forward toward Earth with the main battle fleet. A few human ships in an asteroid field were not his concern. His target was the source of the infection, the human homeworld itself. But as his fleet approached Earth, the planet began to change. Sir, atmospheric readings from Earth are becoming unstable, his science officer reported. Storm systems are forming at an unprecedented rate. Natural phenomena, ignore them. Sir, the storms are appearing in specific patterns. They seem to be forming defensive formations around population centers. Kale Prime looked at the tactical display. The human planet was generating weather patterns that resembled military formations. That was impossible. Begin orbital bombardment. Target the major population centers. The Vorthak fleet opened fire with weapons that could crack continents. But something unprecedented happened. The planet fought back. Lightning bolts the size of skyscrapers reached up from the surface, guided by technology the Vorthak did not understand. Orbital defense platforms that had seemed insignificant revealed themselves to be the focusing points for planetary-scale weapons systems. Most shocking of all, the planet's magnetic field began to fluctuate in ways that disrupted Vorthak electronics. Sir, we are experiencing system failures across the fleet, reported the chief engineer. The planet's magnetic field is interfering with our navigation and weapons systems. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. It appears the humans have found a way to weaponize their planet's natural defenses. On Earth's surface, Dr. So Young watched the orbital battle through her instruments. The Vorthak were learning what it meant to fight a planet that had spent billions of years trying to kill its inhabitants. Tectonic charges are in position, her assistant reported. If any Vorthak forces reach the surface, we can trigger localized earthquakes under their landing zones. Weather modification is holding steady. Storm systems are tracking Vorthak fleet movements. Biological countermeasures are ready for deployment. So Young allowed herself a grim smile. The Vorthak thought they were apex predators because they had conquered their world. Humans had done something different. They had made peace with their world, learned to work with it instead of dominating it. Now Earth itself was fighting for humanity. The turning point came when Vorthak ground forces finally reached Earth's surface. They expected to face human soldiers armed with primitive weapons. Instead, they found a planet that had been turned into a living weapon. The moment the first Vorthak transport touched down, the ground beneath it began to shake. Not randomly, but in calculated patterns designed to collapse landing zones and separate invasion forces. The weather changed instantly, producing localized storms that seemed to follow Vorthak movements while avoiding human positions. Most disturbing of all, the very air began to fight against the invaders. Biological agents developed from Earth's most hostile microorganisms were deployed, targeting the specific biochemistry of Vorthak physiology. Sir, Invasion Commander Nex 9 reported to Supreme War Leader Kale Prime, the planet itself appears to be hostile to our forces. We are losing warriors to environmental factors at an unprecedented rate. Environmental factors? Earthquakes that target our position specifically. Weather patterns that seem designed to disrupt our operations. Atmospheric conditions that interfere with our equipment. And the human defenders? That is the strangest part, sir. They seem unaffected by the environmental changes. It is as if the planet recognizes them as allies. Kale Prime stared at the tactical display showing Earth. For the first time in Vorthak history, they were fighting not just an enemy species, but an entire world. And they were losing. At the same time, Admiral Jihoon's fleet was conducting its own revelation at Ketra Prime. The human ships had fought their way through Vorthak defenses to reach the enemy homeworld, and what they found there changed everything. Scanning the surface, reported the science officer. Admiral, this planet is incredibly hostile, but in predictable ways. The dangers follow specific patterns. Meaning? It's like fighting a very dangerous opponent who always uses the same moves. Deadly, but once you understand the pattern, you can work around it. Jihoon studied the readings. Ketra Prime was indeed a death world, but it was a death world with rules. The acid storms came at regular intervals. The volcanic activity followed geological patterns. The radiation levels varied according to the orbital mechanics of the three-star system. Everything that made Ketra Prime dangerous was consistent and predictable. Compare this to Earth's environmental data, Jihoon ordered. The comparison was shocking. Earth's environmental dangers were chaotic, random, constantly changing. What made Earth dangerous was not any single threat, but the inability to predict what the next threat would be. The Vorthak had evolved to be perfect for surviving their specific world. Humans had evolved to survive change itself.